Zionist meltdown as Oman tanker stunt fails to manipulate oil futures markets. The meltdown of the Zionist-controlled grid is now public, as even the corporate mainstream propaganda media is reporting the attacks last week on tankers near Oman as false flag. The situation has reached the point that former US colonies like Germany and Japan are openly and publicly defying the US President and Secretary of State on this issue. This surreal turn of events is comparable to the fall of communism and the Soviet Union. In this case, we are witnessing the fall of the US corporate government and, possibly, the rebirth of the Republic of the United States of America. In fact, we may even be witnessing the fall from power of the secret family groupings hiding behind monotheism. The 13 bloodlines who have controlled monotheism are, in fact, negotiating a new system for running the planet, according to European royals and members of the White Dragon Society, WDS. If these negotiations succeed, it will be the biggest event in thousands of years in human history. If they fail, there will be chaos and bloodshed, especially among the elite anti-bloodline Gnostic Illuminati, sources say. Even if this sounds exaggerated, events in the actual real world do show a fundamental change. Let's start with the failure of the false flag attack of the coast of Oman. US naval intelligence and CIA sources followed the money to see who benefits from this attack. The trail led to the Rothschild-owned Glencore Commodities Company in Switzerland, which had positioned itself to profit from a spike in oil futures prices immediately before this attack took place, the sources say. Unfortunately, the oil futures price spike turned out to be merely a dead cat bounce, and the Rothschilds failed to profit as expected. That's because the markets and the world have had enough of the Zionists crying Iranian roof, they say. What's interesting about this latest provocation is how even a former US colony like Japan is no longer going along with the Zionist playbook. To quote from corporate news reports, even if it's the United States that makes assertion, we cannot simply say we believe it, said a source close to Germany's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. If having expertise sophisticated enough to conduct the attack could be a reason to conclude that the attacker was Iran, that would apply to the United States and Israel as well, said a source at the Foreign Ministry. As far back as I can remember, this sort of public Germany's rebuke of a sitting US administration has never happened even once since Japan lost World War II. The attack in Oman came as Abe was in Iran trying to get Iranian agreement for a new financial system, Japanese military intelligence sources say. The Iranians were supportive, but not if Zionists like Trump and his Rothschild stooges were involved, the sources say. I do not see Trump as worthy of any message exchange, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei told Abe. The botched false flag to blame Iran has only weakened the Zionists and may lead to the firing of National Security Advisor John Bolton and sincere efforts for a summit with Khamenei, Pentagon sources said. However, Iran and other countries are taking a hard line because it's clear the US is losing the trade war with China big time. Here's the bottom line. Ships are going from China to the US full of real stuff and then returning empty. Even if China wanted to buy stuff from the US, it's too expensive and there's not enough of it. So, in the real world, if trade between the US and China stopped, Americans would stop getting Chinese computers, smartphones, etc., while the Chinese would stop getting American IOUs. In other words, the Chinese would just be losing a customer who cannot pay his bills. It's a no-brainer as to who will win. Public statement last week by the respective commerce minister of both countries showed this power imbalance. President Trump has indicated his strong desire for a meeting with Xi Jinping. Trump economic advisor Larry Kudlow said. Kudlow also made vague threats. Here was the response. China's attitude is very clear. The United States must change its attitude, show sincerity, and correct its wrong practices if it wants the talks to continue, Ministry of Commerce spokesperson Gao Feng told a press conference. So now, Trump has asked for a meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 meeting in Japan on June 28 and 29, in the hopes of getting Russian help in dealing with China. However, Trump has been threatening Germany with troop cuts and other sanctions if they buy gas from Russia instead of at a much higher price from the US. This was nothing other than blackmail and a form of unfair competition, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. The fact is that the Trump regime is now threatening or carrying out sanctions on Russia, Iran, India, Turkey, China, North Korea, Germany, Venezuela, Japan, etc. What these sanctions really boil down to is a hollow threat to buy our stuff or else. With so many countries not obeying, the schoolyard bully is quickly becoming isolated. However, this does not mean the US military-industrial financial complex is powerless. The Oman attack did serve as a discreet reminder that the US military still has the technical ability to choke off vital world trade routes like the Hormuz or Malacca Strait. Also, the Anglo-Dutch-American nexus still controls much of the world's oil, especially in the Middle East. They are negotiating behind the scenes with other oil powers like Russia and France to create a more stable Middle East and bring Iran back to the negotiating table. Already, the Pentagon sources say, Lebanon is now a multilateral protectorate of not just Russia, France, and Italy, but the UK is hoping to drill for gas there with British petroleum. The US military-industrial complex also still has a huge military advantage over all the other countries. United Technologies buying Raytheon should give pause to Boeing and Lockheed and foster more competition and innovation from the military-industrial complex, the Pentagon sources say. Finally, as a huge demonstrations last week in Hong Kong showed, Asians, including India, ASEAN, Japan, and the Korean Peninsula, do not want total Chinese domination. The Asians remain willing and able to finance the US military to guard their independence. Multiple Asian sources concur. The rest of the world also does not want to replace Zionist hegemony with Chinese totalitarianism. That means that in the end, despite the posturing, the world will make sure the US and China reach a win-win conclusion. The Zionists, meanwhile, are waving their stuck-necked cart around like crazy in an effort to keep from imploding. They staged a blackout last week all over Argentina as the country prepares to remove Zionist stooge President Mauricio Macri. The New York Times article last week saying the US could shut down Russia's entire electrical grid was also an obvious Zionist Stuxnet threat. However, Stuxnet may be the Zionists' last card. As they lose their grip over the media and the financial system, they have already lost control of the military. The latest development in their media meltdown was the revelation that a fake Iranian activist, he doesn't exist, published 61 articles in Forbes magazine, my former employer. And though I did not read these 61 articles, it's a safe bet that they were anti-Iranian, fear-mongering propaganda. The chart below shows how the fear-mongering corporate media constantly harps on about murder, terrorism, and suicide. Even as people tune now because none of these issues are even close to being the biggest threat we face. Age-old bloodline tactic of divide and conquer fear-mongering is no longer working. The attempts by ruling elite families to keep power by murdering people are also failing. The probable murders of New York Deputy Police Chief Stephen Silks, veteran detective Joe Calabrese, and former Arkansas State Senator Linda Collins Smith failed miserably to stop ongoing investigations of elite pedophilia. The Justice Department responded to these attempts with the June 11th announcement of the arrest of 1,700 suspected drug predators. The Zionists are also about to lose financial control. Pentagon sources say a Deutsche Bank implosion should lead to the collapse of fiat currency and the launch of the quantum financial system, QFS. The people behind the QFS are negotiating now with the White Dragon Society for the creation of Future Planning Agency and the start of a massive campaign to save the planet, WDS and British royal family sources say. However, no announcement is likely before the autumn, the sources say. This is because changing the world without a world war takes time. In the meantime, we shall see if the US corporate government finally goes bankrupt over the summer. This will be seen in public as another US government shutdown. However, this time it may lead, as many US patriots hope, to a formal announcement of the rebirth of the Republic of the United States of America on the 4th of July this year. Maybe by then Trump will reveal whether he's a Trojan horse for the patriots, as many still hope, or for the Zionists, as his own public words and actions seem to show.